maybe I won't make it, but if it's up to me, I think I can do it.
How many Canadians can you think of more inspirational than Terry Fox? Losing his leg to cancer, this young man refused to quit. Just over 30 years ago, he dipped his artificial leg in the Atlantic Ocean in Newfoundland, proceeded to run a marathon each and every day across Canada, hoping to raise an average of $1 from each and every Canadian, not for his own personal glory, but for cancer research. The man's a hero to me, as I'm sure he is to all of you. Even though Terry's failing health forced him to stop his Marathon of Hope just outside of Thunder Bay, he reached his fundraising goal and then some, because he captured the imagination of an entire country. And the money for cancer research continues to flood in every year in his name, with Terry Fox runs across Canada. Terry Fox Foundation has raised over $500 million over the years, and Terry Fox has been immortalized as a Canadian legend. A national survey in 1999 listing Terry Fox as the greatest Canadian hero in our history. As the word of Terry's run preceded him, all of Canada got behind this brave young man. Watch closely as he logs the miles across Canada. Hear the clatter as he hops on one good leg. Notice the full police escort of 2 patrol cars escorting him along the highway, supporting Terry's support van that held his brother as well as his best friend. Now imagine this. What if it had never happened? What if Terry got stopped in his tracks because certain people decided to stand in the way of his dream? How would you feel about the loss to our collective Canadian consciousness and pride if Terry had not been allowed to make the historic journey because certain people made him feel unwelcome, because it was felt that his highway run was disruptive to the public order? That's exactly what has happened to a man following in Terry's footsteps this week, getting arrested by constables in Quebec for doing a cross-country charity run. And so it's time for some Canadian common sense. Our Canadian hero's name is Curtis Hargrove. He's 23, just a bit older than Terry Fox was when he died. Curtis running across Canada in the hopes of raising $1 million for Stollery Children's Hospital, Edmonton. His 45-day odyssey from the East Coast was largely uneventful. Cops stopped by to make sure he was okay and then moved on. Everything was going smoothly until he crossed the Quebec border. Just 2 kilometers into Quebec, local police told him to get off the road, that his route on the Trans-Canada Highway was unsafe and illegal, even with the support vehicle following up behind him, the same path as Terry Fox did 30 years earlier. The incredulous Curtis Hargrove refused, and so he was arrested for obstruction of justice and thrown in the slammer. An interesting east-west clash. The individualistic oil rig worker from Alberta going up against the Quebec state, thrown in prison for following in Terry's footsteps. When young Curtis was released after spending a number of hours in an interrogation room and forced to sign paperwork that he will not run on the Trans-Canada Highway again, a barter for his freedom, he then finds 4 punks vandalizing his RV, ripping the Canadian flag off the driver's side window. And when he asked them why they would do something so disrespectful, what was their reply? Apparently they didn't like him flying the Canadian flag in their neighborhood, because apparently flying the Canadian flag is some sort of act of aggression in some parts of Canada. I hope Curtis Hargrove's experiences can be chalked up to just some bad luck, running into some wrong people at the wrong time. That's my hope. Hargrove himself has removed the anti-Quebec rhetoric posted on his Facebook page, but the fact that all this happened, it just demonstrates that priorities today are way out of whack. Here's a Terry Fox copycat who gets accosted for following a noble calling. There have been many since who have followed Terry's example. Can you imagine if this happened to Rick Hansen, who managed to raise $13 million for spinal cord research with his cross-Canada mission, cross-the-world mission? Meanwhile, in the same province of Quebec, thousands of other 20-somethings have taken to the streets in recent months, holding the city of Montreal hostage over a tiny tuition hike. And this young man is the one who gets the book thrown at him? After all those days of Occupy protests, illegally camping out in public parks over some vague notion of a lack of fairness on the planet, this young role model, looking to raise money for kids, ends up behind bars? Curtis Hargrove is an example other young men and women should be following. A selfless act amidst the entitlement generation. Both the government and the authorities should be honoring this young man instead of interrupting and interfering with him and throwing him in jail. Curtis Hargrove is the kind of young Canadian we all need to stand behind. The go-getters who are willing to put forth their blood, their sweat, their tears, instead of their whining messages on protest signs. Asking himself what he can do to make Canada a better place instead of asking Canada to coddle him. Thankfully, his experience has generated a lot of interest in his cause. And I would encourage you to check out Run Curtis Run on Facebook. Show your support, financially or with an encouraging word. When Hargrove stands before court in September for his so-called crimes, I hope that judge gives his head a shake. And we can only hope for the sake of our country that some good old-fashioned Canadian common sense will prevail.